Hello and welcome. What is your opinion on the gravity of the situation with private servers lately? So, if you haven't met me before, you don't. My name is Ellie. I've been a player of Ragnarok Online 20 years ago. I've played since the game opened. I started in beta when it was just before beta actually. Back when it was just a server. Portals to get to different like 2, I think. I've played since then. I've been a guild leader and a community leader in the game that whole time. Up until which I will talk about later. Ever the perfection of the game, it's led me a lot of places. So I'm just gonna jump right in on this. First of all, I'm just gonna say also that I'm not gonna use any Ragnarok Online assets in this video at I'm worried about them accidentally DMCAing me for breaking their copyright or assuming that this is a private server video. It is not. It is seriously my opinion on what is going on lately and some background information for people who haven't seen about Ragnarok before. So, Ragnarok Online is a Korean MMORPG developed in the early 2000s. It had a long period of both open and closed beta testing, finally going pay to play in 2003. However, despite being a much-loved game in its early development, was plagued with issues. Most noticeably, the original development team left after an internal dispute with financiers, and this left Gravity with a game that we were never able to finish. Ragnarok Online was then destined to be beta forever. And despite this, the world and classes did continue to be expanded, the population of Ragnarok Online at one point being over 40 million players, and Gravity loved to boast about it. Ragnarok is heavily based on Dungeons and Dragons, the spell names, the classes, the stat system. Fireball sucks here, by the way. It's inclusive of many psychologically addictive gameplay mechanisms as well. Almost everything is RNG based. Item drops, weapon and armor upgrades are all wrapped up in a cute anime-esque skin with catchy BGMs, rewarding sound effects when you level up, and a somewhat adorable, cute set of monsters to fight against. In Korea, Ragnarok was marketed as a romantic RPG, putting in systems in place such as marriage and families. Gameplay content was very basic, if not lacking. Many players just enveloped in a roleplay based scenario when they were logging in. In short, the game is extremely addictive and it's designed that way to be. Over the years, the game changed direction somewhat. It underwent a complete overhaul of the game mechanics, partly to facilitate future development, as the original devs who left took much of the source with them. And also, it changed direction to match the modern market's subscription-based model to a cash shop and microtransaction-based management, which proved extremely controversial with the player base. As Ragnarok aged, they attempted successor, Ragnarok 2. Tried it like 2-3 times. It was made and re-released, but it kept flopping. Eventually, it was mothballed and was left in an archived state for only the North American players to access. With the success of microtransactions, came loot boxes, gacha boxes, all those things that gamers hate. And then came the mobile spin-offs. At the time that I was researching this, there were 8 various mobile games that I were able to find while googling around. I don't play mobile games, but I've seen so many Ragnarok spin-offs. And this particular situation with all the mobile games left the old PC gamers frustrated and furious at the lack of attention that was being given to the PC version, and also the change of direction toward more mobile-friendly monetization. Gravity's business model now seems to be one of selling rights to use their IP, like there are all sorts of clicker games and such, idle pouring, and all sorts of random just games using their IP and their cute little characters. And they also sell licenses for the PC version, locally and regionally. Now this makes a sense, right? Think about it. If you sell a license to various regions, you don't have to run a server there, you don't have to pay the staff. They pay you to send out patches that you're sending to multiple people. Good ways to keep the money rolling in. So, early Ragnarok Online was plagued by a combination of hackings and poor security. It wasn't long before disgruntled players were upset with the slow update schedule or the move to pay to play from the open beta were able to get hold of the server files through one way or another. There was multiple methods. Most notably, a large hacking event happened in 2003 free shortly after paid started. Player accounts were compromised, items were created, GM accounts were accessed. Shortly after that, the first private servers cropped up. If you were a player back then, you may remember that the compensation was the Spotted Sunglasses quest. Despite the presence of private servers from such an early stage in the game's life, more and more server files were obtained by the people who didn't agree with the developments on the official servers. Some were obtained by hacking, and that can do this day. And others were sold by people who work there, and this is true for most of the regions of the game, but most notably the original version. And this allowed for the development of emulators rather than running the stolen files from the official game. What's interesting about this is that use of private servers was never really a secret. Many official players would speak openly about it in front of or directly to the staff, such as practicing for tournaments. And when I say tournaments, I mean ones where if they win, they get to fly to Korea and go to play against all the other regions. Official tournament. So they would openly talk about how they're practicing here to try and represent their region and beat them internationally. I will say that the close staff and players is also quite concerning, and that is a topic that is deserving of its own video, so watch this space for that. So there was never any real teeth behind the rare and occasional threat that Gravity levelled at private servers. They send out cease letters, which would end up either in the server disappearing, but most often it would go and be ignored. And this has been happening for 2 decades. Gravity is quite within their right to defend their IP as well they should. As a business, it's easy for them to be writing off private servers as illegal, but we really need to think about why these servers. So the first thing is you should consider is that Gravity pushed a highly addictive game and knowingly continued to add gambling mechanics and elements to it. Loot crates, gacha, more randomization things. It's gambling just with a different name, and it should be legally recognized as such. And secondly, they never investigated any of the source of the hacking occurred. So all the hackings happened, and if they did investigate, they kept it extremely quiet. Always been atrocious, and it continues to be. Go try and sign up for International Ragnarok Online, and you will flash in your browser. So, why did people turn to private servers and do so? The reasons are numerous and mostly understandable. They start off a bit petty in my opinion, but they become increasingly justified as you look at what's happening in the game. The first reason is not to pay the subscription fee. The subscription fee was a lot of money to the player base at the time when it was implemented, and they were mostly high school and college students. Obviously, the thought of being able to play without having to pay was extremely strong. Other people knew the game was in an unfinished state. The emulated private servers offered something which was good and more content. It was never a secret that Ragnarok was left with tons of unimplemented features when the original dev team left. We should have had houses, we should have had like an honor system, sorts of things in there that were never put in. And you can see remnants of them in the game today. If you open up a guild window, see things like temperament. You know, that's all there and just unused. So, also, think about the people who are taking up the task of by emulator hobby. I mean, why not, right? This would be incredibly rewarding for them and a great learning experience. Later, as the game developed, stronger classes were added, changed the dynamic of the whole game and the balance of power, and people started to crave it in their good old days when their class was more powerful or not being one-shotted by these new classes that were in. So they went to servers that didn't have the updated and classes where they could play in a balance that they preferred. And then came shop. The addition of a cash shop will change the feel of any game immensely. The focus moved away from hunting items to make cute hats to buying said hats from with a credit card, or just selling loots to NPC to buy the hat from someone else who had a credit card. It started off mild, like costumes and things, but soon a cash shop started to become more and more aggressive in selling enhanced experience, drops, increased chances to improve refining, items that gave stat buffs. It stopped being the game that the player base found themselves in a new world that they did not like. Soon enough, the subscription fee was scrapped and more microtransactions items were added, such as the loot crates, and that justified the removal of the subscription fee. They also started to cripple the game on the newer servers, removing features that players were used to in order to make them buy stuff from the shop. What I believe what happened there was that Gravity were attempting to do a more modern approach to monetization. But if you ask me, and you did ask me, right? That's why you're here. They should have been kept this on an entirely new server rather than ripping away the world of the players that have been here for years. Some endured through, but the population started to hemorrhage badly. And despite the players making clear on this change, Gravity pressed forward and the population continued to plummet. Now, the next big exodus to private servers was the advent of Renewal. Renewal was a large update to the game and it changed the way the classes functioned, added new classes and made it much more friendly to the cash shop by shifting the emphasis from stats to equipment. After all, selling equipment that requires players to upgrades, so they will buy special ores to increase the rates of these upgrades. It's easier and much more palatable to the players than selling stats, right? About it making back-end management, it's not really important. Anyway, no official way to play the old pre-renewal style game, except through the emulators. So naturally, many players sought out servers that provided that. Eventually, after some pressure, Gravity tried one classic server on IRO, the international server, and that server proved to have a longer lifespan than any pre-renewal server before it was closed down. It was still cash shop heavy, unfortunately. Oh. Classic opened in June 2012 and closed in June 2019. Put that in perspective, Renewal 2008, giving the original servers 5 years of pre-renewal play after beta, and yet the classic server lasted a whole 7 years. The biggest blow to the population, though, was ban from IRO. This happened in May 2018. Mere 1 month advance notice. All accounts registered from Europe were to be perma-banned, and European IPs blocked from accessing the servers. No servers, no transfers, just. They blame GDPR, the privacy laws in Europe. I have huge doubts over that since European services license changed hands not too long after. Anyway, GDPR came into force 2 years after it actually became law, so they had plenty of time to prepare. They could have done something to stop their players. Also, shortly after they blocked Europe for the privacy laws, they were able to service European players on their mobile game service. And then maybe like a year or so later, they unblocked European players from Dragon Saga, and now it's just the PC Ragnarok Online players that aren't allowed to access the service. So I'm calling bullshit on their GDPR excuse. There was also a European server, so many European players actually played on IRO because the European server was opened later than IRO, and a lot of us already had a base established on IRO, like lots of friends and stuff. They did offer a transfer, not to people in the UK, so it was never offered to me. I did watch a lot of my friends go to the European server, but not all. So, you know, that's why a lot of people from Europe did stay on IRO. Or they wanted to play on Classic. IRO had the only Classic service. Or on RO2, which IRO also began to have the only service for. There was also the small matter that the European server was behind IRO in updates quite significantly. So what I'm saying is that IRO had a huge European population that had been there for a very long time. Myself, for example, having been there for 16 years and being a guild leader. 16 years is a long time to build friends and community ties. Naturally, when the Europeans had to leave, many of their international friends followed, regardless of where they were from. Started a cycle of IRO closing and opening servers since the EU ban 4 years prior to this video. IRO has closed 3 servers, including Classic, which limped along as life support for a whole year after the EU ban, before finally succumbing to low population. I also believe that EU ban was the nail that killed Classic, since my guild was actually huge there. And without us, there was really nobody to fight. My entire guild followed me off of IRO, and I love them for it, really. It has to be expected, though. I guess, like, in that whole story of, like, all the things that Gravity did, there was scandals and stuff. I'm not going to dwell on that because that could also of its own. Along this whole journey, Gravity have had chances to keep these players or change their ways. They could have updated their security, thought over their microtransaction model. They could have catered to classic players worldwide. I'm not saying that piracy is the right thing to do. You know that movie you streamed the other day? You should go buy a copy. Damn. And yeah, you wouldn't download a car, would you? But what I am saying is Gravity brought this whole situation themselves. Some care and interaction with those private server communities and made adjustments or a side product to retain those players. But as it stands, and I'm not really that good at throwing out bullshit numbers, but I'm going to guess that about 80% of private server players are not lost to Gravity. People who left because of trans class will never return because they're on like almost 4th classes now, so they didn't like trans, they would have hated 3rd, and they would despise 4th. They're never going back. People who left because of renewal, same energy. Gravity doesn't even offer a classic version of the game, so they're never going to go back if they renewal that much. And the cash shop players, you know, the people that absolutely hate the cash shop, that's not happening, not unless something changes. As for the European players, Europeans have dealt with a cycle of server closures and reopenings with lost progress almost every time, all the way up to the ban, at which point they were shuffled to PNRO if they wanted a legal version to play. And by the way, nobody outside Europe was allowed to access that service, so I couldn't have a guild there, which was closed down months after they were banned from IRO. The new company opened up a server with an early episode of renewal, so even if you did go there, you'd be going backwards in progress significantly. That server flopped, and then they opened a new one, and again, it's way behind in updates. And that's the life of playing Ragnarok from Europe. We are 4 years after the European ban, 20 years after going pay to play. Gravity have just decided to go berserk, defending themselves against private servers. A company that barely advertises developed a strange hate boner against videos and streamers of unauthorized servers. And when I started streaming IRO, there were maybe 5 streamers, and that's barely changed. But what I do know is there's a lot of people who asked me, what is that game? Even when playing on private servers, they were proceeded to go look it up and found the official servers and went and played there. Some of them moved away from it because they didn't like the cash shop model or because of sloppy management. But either way, you know, my streams from the day I started on officials all the way through to playing private servers after the EU ban were constantly sending people to actual servers. The new policy against piracy has been sudden and aggressive. Twitch streamers are getting all of their VOD struck at once, which leads to them losing their channels. In some of them, that is a lot of income, and it hurts. Instead of ceasing, Gravity are going straight into lawsuits. There's at least one out there right now requesting a jury trial against one private server, and it's been announced on all their region's websites, taking legal action against 7 servers in North America alone, with worldwide. From personal experience, they're not being too careful. I got a DMCA strike on Twitch for streaming old play from Classic. Luckily, it wasn't my main Twitch account, but still, I've been contesting it with them, as I can see a lot of streamers would be hurt by this mistake. It's been almost a week, but Gravity is still refusing to acknowledge the mistake, saying to take it to Twitch, who say to take it up with the copyright holder. It really is as if they don't want to engage. Obviously, the private server issue is an issue for them. They need to defend their IP. Can they blame private servers for a loss of revenue? I don't think so. In my experience from playing and dealing with, I honestly think that private servers are more exposure and advertising for them than harm. Most people on private servers are just lost customers and never returning. They're not lost revenue. They despise the cash shop model so much that they won't play. They don't like renewals, so they'd rather play another game. That's why they're not there. So if you think about what is their excuse right now, what are they saying? Private servers who offer content that we don't have, such as a depreciated version of the game or a cash shop free play, are costing us users because they are playing servers that we don't offer and they play ours, therefore are losing income. No. Not how this works, Gravity. By the way, amusement value, their statement talks about private servers not being safe and secure. And this is coming from the company that requires Flash for registration in 2022 and refusing to comply with data protection laws in Europe and rather ban the whole continent instead. And they dare talk about security and safety. That doesn't add up, does it? If there's to be any future for the PC version of the game, Gravity needs to stop being so pig-headed and work with a legal solution for these players. Many developers in the private server world would be happy to reach out, and some of them even have, even asking to buy a license, and they're being met with silence. They're turning people who may have wanted to support them against the options. Why not warm streamers before they get their channels permabanned? Why not just ask them to stop before they go ahead and strike random old VODs and take them out in one swoop? Why not issue cease and letters before following up with even action? The whole thing is a very fast and decisive move, which is poisoning against them, and they really need to hearts and souls to come and play their games. They're not Nintendo, they can't afford to do this. It's so rapid and brutal, I can only speculate on why they're doing it, and frankly, it doesn't come up as good scenarios in my head. But I suppose if Gravity don't want to make something amazing with dedicated fans out there, do is wait for the PC version to die off completely as they keep despicable things and not gaining players. In the meantime, I'm sure they're coming up with some cash grab project for the 20th anniversary this June. If it seems good initially, it will probably change later. It'll be another bait and switch capitalizing on nostalgia like all recent servers. They like to throw the word classic to try and bait people back from the classic era, but it's still done with the new mechanics. So people who see the word classic, they log on and they realize that it's the updated version of the game, and then they leave. Last one. Monetized cash shop. You could buy potions for your HP from day one. So if that's the way they're going to do things, personally, I think I'll pass. I might do a quick whip around and fundraise to send them a cake or something, or some donuts, because despite all of this madness, those important time for my life, and they facilitated that and made it possible. I love all the people that I've met. I have a great online family. I've flown out to visit them. Really, playing RO has been a life-changing experience, and I spent so long trying to make sure that other players would have as good of an experience as I did. Running events, I would help people out on the forums. I would act as a go-between for the staff and the players to try and smooth things over. I was always suggesting to staff, sometimes just like sounding their ideas. I've tried to make Ragnarok Online the best game it possibly I was playing there. In my heart, I still want to do that, but I can't play officials, and it hurts. So, Gravity, if you're listening, please, just get it together, okay? Let's figure something out with your fans. Everyone's out there. But, anyway, that's my piece. I've said everything I need to say. And Ellie, later, have a good day.